I'm going to be talking to Jennifer Saldana, who is the Director of ESG Performance and Reporting for Nmax, about the City of Calgary-owned utilities' latest ESG report. So welcome to the interview, Jennifer.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Look, it's an interesting report because it talks about many of the energy transition ideas around electrification and net zero. So I want to talk about some of those ideas. The Nmax says that it supports Canada's ambition to become net zero by 2050. What do you mean by that?
So within the report, we do have our own ambition to be net zero by 2050. So as part of doing that, we are supporting Canada's goal. And within that, we have an interim target of reducing our emissions by 70% by 2030. And so that's our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions from our 2015 level. And currently, we've achieved 66% reduction in that target.
Well, now that's interesting. I was looking at the stats, and your power generation comes 86% from gas, from natural gas, 14% from wind. How are you reducing the emissions?
So in 2015, we did have coal as part of the portfolio, and we were early exiters of coal at the time. So that's part of that reduction. We're also doing a lot to increase the efficiency of our natural gas generation and expand our portfolio of solar and wind.
And given the fact that your gas assets, and I think primarily Shepherd Center, which was when I lived down in Mackenzie Town, only about a kilometer away from where I lived, but it's fairly recent. And those are usually 30, 40, 50-year assets. Since the goal is net zero by 2050, will you be using carbon capture? How are you going to get to net zero with, again, still have gas in your portfolio?
So we're looking at a number of options, and you can see in our report we have developing a net zero pathway as part of the report. And we talk about all of the options that we're looking at, and within that pathway, the things that are near term, we have a number of milestones, are the things that we're actively working on. And as you go further out, things become a bit more conceptual, and we're looking at technologies at that time that may not even be out. But there are a number of things that we're currently exploring and some that we're actively adopting that we go through in the report, including improving efficiency. Even at Shepherd, we did a turbine replacement last year at Shepherd, which has given us an additional 11 megawatts of generation over our annual average. We're growing our renewable portfolio. We're looking at carbon capture utilization and storage, or CCUS, battery storage, and many other technologies. We have an innovation team internally that is chasing a number of pilots too.
Now that's interesting. You've got an innovation team, and I think everyone agrees. Well, it's federal policy, right? And that we're going, part of how we get to net zero by 2050 is to electrify everything. And is Nmax already planning for electrification of things like buildings and transportation and industry within Calgary?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the key priorities for us is in the electric vehicles. So we're doing a lot of work there. We're also following the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures recommendations. So the TCFD, I'm sure you're familiar with it, to guide our pathway to net zero, which includes running financial climate-related scenarios to inform our decision-making through the energy transition. And part of that has that increasing demand scenario.
Right, and that's the scenario I'm talking about. So what kind of things is Nmax doing to prepare for that increasing demand?
So we're doing a number of things. We're doing all of the things, actually, because there is no one solution. We're looking really closely at electric vehicles, both for ourselves and for our customers. So we're advancing the electrification of our mobile fleet, and we're piloting 2 medium-duty EV trucks. We're developing a 3-year mobile fleet electrification plan. And we also did a charge up pilot, which we moved forward this year to help us prepare for EV growth by studying EV adoption and the overall effect EVs have on the power grid. And that's trying to change customer behavior so that we've got off-peak charging and all of that. But we're also enabling more renewable and distributed generation. So how are we getting solar panels on people's houses? We have a really neat partnership with the city right now on the community solar fund. So we're putting solar panels on community centers. So a lot of this is looking at the grid and what it can handle, but also looking at some of these other solutions to provide energy to people that doesn't burden the grid in the same way.
Yeah, of all the questions that get asked on EV groups, one of the most popular is, will electrical utilities be able to upgrade their distribution infrastructures to handle EV charging at the community level? So you're not blowing transformers, that sort of thing. What's Nmax's approach to that?
So a number of things that the charging behavior is a big one. We also have a pilot project on advanced metering infrastructure so that people can take ownership of their electricity usage, and they can see when they're using, how to reduce consumption. So there's a lot of that. We're also doing ongoing maintenance and upgrading of the grid, but we're really looking at how do we do all of these things together? So improve efficiency, look at behavior changes, and also enable more of the solar generation, the distributed power.
Your ESG report says that Nmax is investing in grid resilience, and it's a big issue down in the States. You see Texas, you see California, where they've had brownouts, blackouts, that sort of thing. What is Nmax doing to improve grid resilience in Calgary?
So part of it is that investment that I spoke about of making sure that we're improving efficiency of everything that we have so that we can manage that growth over time, and also investing in that distributed generation, more commercial solar. We've got the wind generation as well, but we've got Shepherd, which is a base plant, which provides a very consistent load. And we also have the peakers that aren't used all of the time. So those come on to supplement when the energy usage goes high, like it did last summer.
And your report also says that Nmax offsets its building emissions. I was interested in that. What are you using offsetting credits? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, and we've actually been doing this for over a decade. And at the main building that I'm in right now, we have solar panels on the roof to reduce the overall consumption. What we've committed to in the report is to offset our building emissions going forward. So while this is a practice we've been doing for a while, we are committed to doing that on a go-forward basis. So we did our offsets for 2020, and we're in the process of doing our 2021 offsets because we just finalized our GHG emissions. We do purchase offset credits to do that. Sometimes it's from our own operations. So last year we used a lot of our wind credits to do that.
And I'm kind of curious if Nmax already does offer these or plans to offer in the future, and that's subsidies for switching to electric technologies. And I'm thinking heat pumps in homes and commercial buildings, electric vehicles, maybe some industrial technologies. If we saw in Ontario with a couple of steel plants that switched over to electrical processes. What about that?
So for subsidies, we're trying to work with all of our customers to come up with solutions. There isn't anything specific in the subsidy space, but all of these options are on the table as we move forward. If we haven't talked about it in the report, then we don't have the action behind it yet, but we do have a lot of ideas in advancing and moving forward.
Is it fair to say, Jennifer, that Nmax as a utility is aware of the transition away from fossil fuels to electricity and low carbon fuels, and in his plans to be, a big player in that in the Calgary economy?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we're following the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, because that really comes into those climate-related risks to both our business and the economy. So we're running these financial scenarios to see all of the different potential impacts to our business, and then we're adapting to those changes as we start seeing them. And it really guides our investment forward in the energy transition. So we do see that, and that's a major area of focus because most of our emissions come from our natural gas generation. So we're looking at how to get that to net zero.
One question I forgot to ask you, and that is, what role does hydrogen play in your plants?
So we do have a bunch of technologies that we're looking at. We are assessing hydrogen currently. We talk about it in the report. There's a section on the options we're assessing where we say where we are in the hydrogen process, but we've got a group that's doing a lot of research in that space and on all of these technologies. So stay tuned on hydrogen.
Great, Jennifer. Thank you very much for this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was really nice to meet you.